Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
We are an inclusive faith community
seeking to live out the loving, just, and generous way of Jesus.
We are participants in a long tradition
that's less concerned with doctrines and dogma that demand total agreement,
but a life to be lived, enjoyed, and given away to others.
What unites us is a growing awareness that life is precious.
That we are made by love in order to love.
This community is comprised of and affirms the entire human family.
Regardless of race, age, creed,
physical abilities, marital or economic status,
gender identity, or sexual orientation.
So, if you're curious and have come to see,
if you are tired and have come to rest,
if you are grateful and have come to share,
if you are wounded and have come to heal,
if you're joyful and have come to celebrate,
if you are uprooted and have come to belong,
welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. None else could heal all our souls' diseases. No, not one. No, not one. Jesus knows all about our struggles. He will guide till the day is done. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. Yeah. There's not an hour that he is not near us. No, not one. No, not one. No night so dark, but his love can cheer us. No, not one. No, not one. Jesus knows all about our struggles. He will guide till the day is done. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. Did e'er a saint find this friend, forsake him? No, not one. No, not one. Or sinner find that he would not take him? No, not one. No, not one. Jesus knows all about our struggles. He will guide till the day is done. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. gentle persuasion, whispers a comforting word. Wait till the darkness is over. Wait till the tempest is done. Hope for the sunshine tomorrow. After the shower is gone. After the shower is gone. Whispering hope, how welcome thy voice, making my heart in sorrow rejoice. Whispering hope, how welcome thy voice, making my heart in sorrow rejoice. Dusk of the twilight dim be the region far, will not the deepening darkness brighten the glimmering star. Then when the night is upon us, why should the heart sink away? When the dark midnight is over, watch for the breaking of day. Watch for the breaking of day. Whispering hope, how welcome thy voice, making my heart in sorrow rejoice. Whispering hope, how welcome thy voice, making my heart in sorrow rejoice. An anchor so steadfast rends the dark veil for the soul, whither the master has entered, robbing the grave of its gold. Come then, oh come glad fruition, come to my sad weary heart. Come, oh thou blessed hope of glory, never, oh never depart. Never, oh never depart. Whispering hope, how welcome thy voice, making my heart in sorrow rejoice. Whispering hope, how welcome thy voice, making my heart in sorrow rejoice, making my heart in sorrow rejoice.
Good morning. In the spirit of living out the good news, I wanted to start this week's announcements by sharing some of the ways that you as a community are demonstrating the good news to those around you. This week, we were able to deliver 70 Thanksgiving dinners to Operation Niall. On top of those Thanksgiving meals, we were also able to provide 100 meal kits for their food pantry on Saturday. The Thanksgiving dinners covered the entire meal. Families will be given the choice of a turkey or a ham. They'll have access to the ingredients for stuffing, potatoes, gravy, rolls, all of it because of your generosity. They are being reminded that they are seen and that they matter, and that is just beautiful. In addition, we've sent a minivan loaded with food donations to Dorcas, as well as a minivan to Holly Springs Food Pantry and a third van to Operation Niall. Food pantries are seeing a dramatic increase in need, and you are helping them to meet that need. I cannot thank you enough. We get to continue living out the generous ways of Christ, and we get to represent love without strings attached as we move into the holiday season. For the past 5 years, Crosspointe has partnered with White Oak Foundation to help provide the holiday gifts for their assistance recipients. After much thought and a lot of research and many conversations with other organizations that support families during the holiday season, we are going to be changing up our approach this year. We realize that one of the joys of gift giving is being able to participate in the gift selection and not to be just as surprised about what the gift recipient is receiving on that morning as they are. In an attempt to restore dignity to the families and also allow the individuals to actively participate in the selection of gifts for their family members, we are going to create a Christmas store at White Oak. The vision is for families and individuals to be able to come to White Oak on December 13th, pick out their gifts for their loved ones, free of charge, and also enjoy some holiday festivities like hot chocolate and cookies at the same time. As you can imagine, this is going to be a huge undertaking, and we are going to need your help. As in years past, we have a sign-up genius for the gift items. The sign-up does look a little different as you're not selecting a specific gift for a specific individual. But based on what we know about the families participating, we have been able to create a store inventory of sorts, and we are hoping the Crosspointe community can stock the shelves of our store. The sign-up for gifts is live, and you can use the QR code on the screen to sign up for your contribution and bring it by the church. Additionally, we are going to need a lot more volunteers to pull this off. Over the next few weeks, we'll need volunteers to help receive our inventory, sort through it, and also to help create a store on the 13th. You can sign up to volunteer using the QR code that's on the screen. If you have any questions about the new approach or how to participate, please go to our website, crosspointe.org/events. Another way that we can live out good news is to love and care for those in our community well. The holidays are not always a joyful time for everyone. I want to encourage you to reach out to those in your community who may be missing a loved one this year. Or maybe there's been a significant life change and it's just not a happy holiday. A lot of families and individuals are really struggling, and it can make such a difference for them to know that you see them and you see their hurt and you care for them. Each year, Crosspointe holds our annual Remember service in an attempt to create space for those who are grieving during this season. For as long as I can remember, this service was held the week immediately following Thanksgiving. But this year it has been moved back. It will take place on December 11th. Doors open at 6:30 so that individuals and families can take advantage of various environments to be still, to express their grief, to talk to someone, or just take a breath. The service portion will start at 7. The environments will also be available after the service as well. Please do us a favor and register using the QR code on the screen. More details can be found on our website. I mentioned in the e-news a few weeks ago that this community is such an encouragement to me and so many. We are able to do what we do because of your ongoing generosity and financial support. Your financial gifts empower me to say yes to people who seek rent assistance, to avoid eviction, or help with their utility bills. Your gifts help us create spaces for those who are grieving. Your contributions directly impact the many ways that Crosspointe is able to be a church that loves and cares for all people. If you would like to partner with us financially, you can do so by going to our website or by sending a text crosspointenc to 77977 and following the prompts. Crosspointe, I am so incredibly grateful for you. I hope that as we go throughout this week, you are able to see and be good in the world. Have a great week.
Imagine you're at your big family Thanksgiving, and like every year, you're eyeing the green bean casserole with a sense of dread. No one in the family actually ever eats this green bean casserole, but everybody claims to. They claim that it's really good. But this year, you're thinking more clearly about it and the ingredients in it that's been in this family recipe for generations. You know, the green beans, cream of mushroom soup, salt, pepper, some other things, 1 3-ounce can of cyanide. Imagine that you're the one who finally works up the courage to say, wait a minute, this ingredient, cyanide, this has never really made sense, that it would be in good food shared by loving family members. Why is there deadly poison in the casserole? So you ask your great-grandmother about the cyanide, careful not to offend. And her response is, you're not allowed to ask that because the recipe is old. But then you get your hands on the recipe written on a floppy, stained old index card, and you find that originally it didn't say cyanide, it said French fried onions. And somebody a long time ago, apparently they didn't like French fried onions, didn't understand the word that they were using, and so they just wrote cyanide. That would be really strange, I grant you, but you'd get a lot of relief from that moment, wouldn't you? You'd know that that feeling you'd always had deep down, that something was off, you'd been right all along. Now you could make casserole the way it was intended, and nobody has to pretend or jump through any explanatory hoops with their family members about why cyanide is actually good. That's an appropriate ingredient for the family to be ingesting. That would be really good news, right? Lest I bury the lead, and this might be one of those messages you grab a pen and paper for, I want to give you the point and the punchline up front. And as I do so, I want to ask that you don't shut down or get defensive, because as always, you're free to disagree and you will be just as loved as you do so. But here's my point up front, and it's connected to some things. There's no place named hell in the Bible. Now, I say that aware that you can go on the shelf, grab a Bible, and see that it's in there. You can go online and find that the King James Bible has the word hell in it 54 times, and the English Standard Version has it 14 times, NIV has it 13 times, and on and on and on, all those different variations on English translations. I say that aware that you have heard from preachers and your favorite pastor and online God talkers that maybe you've even said it. Jesus talked about hell more than anyone else in the whole Bible. I know all that, but let me restate it. There's no cyanide in your green bean casserole. None. There's no place named hell in any text of the scriptures. And that's why some translations, if you keep looking, if you do a word count for the word hell, it'll show you 0, because that's what's actually accurate. Now, I spoke on this in much greater detail in a message back on July 18th, 2021, as part of our series that we entitled Weapons and Balm. There's some good stuff there that I won't get to today. But for today, I want to say something about words and places and how important it is that we know what we're reading and believing when we talk about these things. Then I want to talk about the immediate implications of what I'm saying, and then why I think this matters at this moment in history with all the other stuff going on in the world and maybe in your life. So first, I want to talk about words. The word hell didn't really exist until about 7 centuries after the birth of Jesus, and when it did, it came from completely different traditions. The Norse tradition comes from the word halja, and it means concealed or hidden. Had nothing to do with torment. It wasn't until much later that Christians began using this word, a variation of it, and connected to it some imagery from some other writings. And they conjured the idea that many of us have in our head as soon as we hear the word now, this vindictive, endless pain cave. They applied this name hell to several places in the scriptures that already had names. And before I get into what those places are, I want to be clear about something. Anybody who's multilingual knows this on the level of common sense. And this may be oversimplistic to put it this way. But when you're translating, you're taking their words and their grammar rules, and as faithfully as possible, you're putting it in our words, with our grammar rules. I know there's a little more to it than that, but that's the gist of it. So if you're translating the sentence, "the dog walked towards Steve," into Spanish, you would respect that Spanish-speaking people have words already for every one of those English words. So el perro, and then walks toward is camino hacia, and then my name would not be translated, but it'd be transliterated to keep my actual name, Steve. So you just say Steve at the end. Or what you could do is you could translate Steve as well, but you would translate it into Esteban, because the Spanish language, they already have a Steve. They have an equivalent, and it's rooted in the exact same source that the English name Steve comes from. It means the same thing. It's essentially the same word. So that's why in the Bible you see everything is translated into English, but you still have Jerusalem and Nazareth and all that. Those are the names of the places. And that might not be precisely how you pronounce it in the original language, because it's been anglicized or made pronounceable a certain way by English speakers. But the name remains intact because it's the same name of the actual place, not translated, but transliterated into English letters. Now, if the translation of the earlier sentence from English to Spanish said, El perro camino hacia Cary or Pablo, you'd stop and say, hang on, right there at the end, you botched the translation because you've changed the name into a different person's name, not the equivalent. So the oldest English translations of the Bible translated a place that already had a name, Sheol, to a different place called hell. Now, most versions don't do this anymore. That's why the King James has such a high count when it comes to the word hell. Instead, what they do is they go ahead and transliterate Sheol. It already had a name. And Sheol is just what ancient Hebrew people called the state of being dead, or the pit that they were buried in. It didn't have anything to do with torture or agony or God being vindictive over and over. It was just death, game over. In the New Testament, hell is often translated from already existing places like Hades. Hades predates Christianity. It comes from ancient Greek. Hades is a Greek god, as well as the name of the realm that god managed. And again, this predates Christianity. This is ancient Greek mythology that people in Jesus' day were very aware of, for sure. It shaped how they talked to each other. Maybe like a Christian today would, drive a Jeep Cherokee or fly an Apache helicopter. We just sort of take for granted that those are pre-existing names and cultural ideas, and we just sort of made them ours and used the names in a way that has nothing to do with their origins. Jesus references Hades, but most of the time it gets translated hell in English Bibles, but he wasn't talking about a place called hell. He never heard of that. He was referring to terms and ideas associated with a popular cultural understanding of Greek mythology to make a point that had nothing to do with literal post-death realities. Now, another place that has its own name that gets translated hell is Tartarus. This is also ancient Greek mythology, and this is a realm that's located far, far below Hades. And this was actually a place of torment, but it was chiefly for the Titans, those older gods that came before the Olympians. But it wasn't necessarily permanent. Zeus let people out sometimes when he needed help. I think that's what he did with Cyclops. So there's a whole bunch happening there that we miss if you just say, we're just going to take Tartarus and we're going to call that hell too. And brand new translations still do this. But calling that place hell paves over a whole bunch of context that the people that first heard this did. That's like saying, instead of saying Tony Stark, you just say an inventor. It leaves out so much shared cultural context, so much story, that it actually misleads far more than it clarifies anything. Now, the fourth place name, translated hell, this is the one Jesus uses the most. But instead of showing you in the Bible what the place is actually called, I'm going to show it to you on a map. This is a map of Jerusalem today, and you can see the old city and numerous places are named. This is just Google Maps. You can look it up yourself. And some of you have actually been there and know some of these areas and maybe have pictures on your phone of the area. To the south of the city, right where it was when Jesus was a little boy, is the Valley of Hinnom. Whereas you might say it in his language, in the language of the Bible, Gehenna, or Gehenna. So when Jesus says things like, if your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. It's better for you to lose one of your parts than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. There's some context there. Maybe we'll talk about another Sunday. But know that every word in that is translated faithfully, so far as anybody can tell, except for the word hell. The name of the place Jesus references there, and every other place that is rendered hell, is Gehenna, Valley Hinnom. It's an actual place with actual context, had superstition and stories attached to it. Hinnom Valley was a place completely tattooed onto the imagination of people's minds in Jesus' day. It's this cursed valley outside of town that everybody knows how to talk about, that kids wouldn't go near. This place where terrible things had happened. And so renaming it something else just erases all that. And sometimes people will say, I know it says Gehenna in the original language, but hell is just another word for it. That's not valid. I often respond to those folks that say, well, you know, Jesus was crucified in Detroit, Michigan. So if they say anything wrong, or say anything that implies that I'm wrong about that, I just say, well, that's just what I call Jerusalem. And of course that doesn't make sense. And it wouldn't make sense in 1,000 years either. The name of the place matters, especially to the original speaker and audience. So when we say hell now, it calls to mind things Jesus had never heard of. And at the same time erases what was actually in his mind and in his audience's mind. It completely erases that Jesus was, when he was saying that, he was pointing miles away, sometimes only a few hundred yards away, depending on where he was. It erases all that. It erases that Jesus is pointing this place as a reference for what happens when people forget who they are, and to remind them of the importance to be those who trust the way of God's love and compassion and justice more than the way of violent, desperate, destructive self-interest. When you put hell there, it makes us think our whole faith is about what happens after we die, rather than this life. It pushes it to post-death, where God and God's love suddenly, psychotically change into something else. The most cruel, vindictive, merciless, unlike Jesus monster that the universe has ever seen. But what Jesus is actually referring to when he says Hinnom Valley, it had nothing to do whatsoever with a realm designed for people who hadn't properly prayed the sinner's prayer, hadn't been baptized in enough water, or whatever it was that they did so that they can have their bodies wounded and rewounded and rewounded and rewounded every second for all eternity without relief. Never entered his mind. And to reinforce this, do you want to see what God is recorded to have said centuries before Jesus about this actual valley that we are translating hell? To speak of the actual valley of Hinnom and why it was associated by Jesus' day with so much curse, dishonor, ruin. Here's part of Jeremiah chapter 19, something Jesus would have had memorized. Thus says the Lord, take with you some of the elders of the people and some of the senior priests and go out to the valley of Hinnom at the entry of the potsherd gate and proclaim there, I'm going to bring such disaster upon this place that the ears of everyone who hears of it will tingle. Because the people have forsaken me and have profaned this place by making offerings in it to other gods whom neither they nor their ancestors nor the kings of Judah have known. And because they have filled this place with the blood of the innocent and have gone on building the high places of Baal, this other god and this other worship center, to burn their children in the fire as burnt offerings to Baal, which I didn't command or decree, nor did it ever enter my mind. So you see how God is presented as having never thought of the violences against innocent people that had happened in this place. Burning their children as some sort of offering, as though that was wanted or right, that belongs to this whole other faith tradition, this whole other awful God. So the God of Israel is presented here as horrified, disgusted by the evil that's happened there. And so then God continues, therefore the days are surely coming, says the Lord, when this place shall no more be called Tophet, which means place of fire. And it's no longer going to be called the Valley of Hinnom. That's a Hebrew word that means something like lamentation or wailing, such as you could expect to hear while all these awful things were happening. But it's going to be called the Valley of Slaughter. And in this place I'll make void the plans of Judah and Jerusalem, and will make them fall by the sword before their enemies, by the hand of those who seek their life. I'm going to give their dead bodies for food to the birds of the air and to the wild animals of the earth. This is a huge dishonor. You won't even get a burial. You'll become food for vultures. I'm going to make this city a horror, a thing to be hissed at. Everybody who passes by it will be horrified and will hiss because of its disasters. So, again, God is presented as so horrified by what's happened here that God's like, I'm going to rename this place the Valley of Slaughter, because that's what you're doing to yourself. I'm just going to let it happen. I'm going to take my protective hand off of you. And so when people walk by this place and remember what you've done, the disgusting, evil things that you did to each other and your kids, and then remember what that brought on your own heads as a result, they'll shiver in disgust. So Hinnom Valley, for years, and then by Jesus' day, this is a place where you remember human depravity. One where you remember God as depicted as unable to stomach some of the things that we do to each other. Such treatment of human beings never entered God's mind. Burning people? Now, you tell me how we got from that, where Jesus points to the place centuries later and says, remember what happens to malignant self-interest and greed and violence and injustice and cruelty. Remember what happens. Remember how it turns out. You tell me how we got from what God is saying in Jeremiah 19 to Jesus pointing to it, and then Jesus' own character in the Gospels, that now most of us believe God is the one who creates this vast cave under the earth that does far, far worse for far, far longer to far, far more people for the crime of not being part of the right religion, among other things. You've always known that was madness. And now you know you were right. You knew there wasn't supposed to be cyanide in the casserole. You've known the whole time. That's insane. And for those of us, and I understand, this is disruptive, and so we feel compelled to hold on to the idea of hell because we think, as we've been taught, it's a necessary part of God's holy justice. Let me ask you, would you do it? Would you sentence a teenager who never went to church and stole a candy bar and then died to eternal torture? Or a grown woman who used her influence and her cleverness to bilk money out of a bunch of people's pockets because long ago something considerate and kind inside her shut down and she didn't get a chance to restart it and she died. Would you do it? Would you say burning her body endlessly was the right and just course? Of course you wouldn't. And with love and respect to you, we don't get to wriggle out of it. Maybe you find yourself doing this now. We don't get to wriggle out of it by saying, well, we just don't understand or comprehend God's love and justice. Some people will say that, well, you're adding emotion to it, as if God's wrath is not an emotion. You're adding emotion to it. We just don't understand. We can't comprehend God's perfect justice and love. Okay, maybe. But then surely you'd agree that we shouldn't ask people then if they know the Lord. Because we should admit, we don't. We don't even know if hurting people forever is good and loving or not. So surely we would agree with each other that we have no business telling other people, it's not a religion, it's a relationship. Or we have the truth that we share with others, right? We shouldn't do that. We don't even know if something is terrorism or love, cruelty or justice. But in reality, of course you know. Of course we know that. We've always known in the hearts that God gave us. We've always known. All right, so let me check in. I'm hoping you're doing okay. This is all going somewhere really good, I promise. Maybe we can come up for air for a second with a fun fact. Did you know birds have regional accents? It's true. It's not only true, it's very interesting. A bird may chirp like this in one location, but in another place they say, hey, y'all. Look it up. It's largely true, as I've put it. All right, so let me drill down on the next layer, because important questions tend to come up right here. And I hope I don't come off as pounding my fist about all this, as it's me emphatically saying that there's a better way for us all. So let's keep going. I want to shift our attention just a little bit, because there's a question that comes up. If the gospel the good news. It can be the terminology can be translated either way. If the good news is about Jesus saving us from eternal torture, punishment, whatever it is, does it matter if we name it hell, Hinnom Valley, whatever? That's a good question. I'm glad I imagined you asking it. There is nowhere in the New Testament that says that the gospel or the good news is us being saved from a place that can be translated or mistranslated hell. So Paul, in all his writings in the New Testament, never references anything about a hell, Gehenna, Tartarus, Sheol, nothing. And this is St. Paul, Pablo, the most famous missionary and evangelist in history, going around telling people the good news. But not one time in his writings does he say that the gospel is about avoiding these places. The Gospel of John, the fourth of the four Gospels, not one time does he make a single mention or have Jesus mention a single thing about anything that could be translated or mistranslated. Hell, Gehenna, Sheol, Hades, Tartarus, nothing like that. And for a man who set out to write a gospel, this is a huge whoopsie-daisy to forget to include the place that the gospel allegedly gets us out of. I have been teaching the Bible for about 25 years. That doesn't make me an expert. I still have most things to learn. But it does add some weight to what I'm going to say next. I and millions of others have looked, and despite all the Sunday school lessons and all the sermons and all the everything, it's not there. It's not even implied. There's nothing in Jesus' inspired and recorded message that ever says that the gospel has anything to do with avoiding a place that's going to hurt our bodies forever. It's not there. And so I can admit that there's some snark in how I'm putting some of this, but I'm as serious and sincere about this as I am about anything that I teach. If the choice we're being given ultimately comes down to you either become a Christian, and not just but the right kind of Christian, or you will be bodily tormented forever, then where in the Bible is the clear, unambiguous black and white teaching that everybody of any age can be warned by? That the good news of the gospel is you're going to be broiled for offending the God of love. But here's the one way out for the minority of us who say yes to it and end up in the right churches so that we can. It's not there. Now, obviously, you can string together a whole bunch of different ideas and claim that it is, but it's not there. Now, does Jesus say things about consequences and judgment about our behaviors and misdeeds? Absolutely. We talk about that quite a bit, and we should listen to what is being said, especially because that judgment comes most directly at those of us who carry God's name, call Jesus Lord, and yet treat other people, the vulnerable and the disadvantaged, the hungry and the hurting, and on and on and on. We treat those people as less than ourselves, as problems in our way. We should pay close attention. Does Jesus say things about our unjust, selfish crap ending up landing on our own heads one way or another? Absolutely, and we should pay attention. And can you imagine a God called love that doesn't spell out that there are consequences for acting in opposition to love and justice? Absolutely. It's not torture. That doesn't make any sense. But that there are still consequences. Absolutely. Does Jesus talk about fire? Yeah, several times. But you know that God is also called a fire, and we know God isn't hell. So have you and I contemplated what it might be like for the broken, self-interested, self-deceived part of ourselves to come into the presence of the fire of God's love? I mean, have you never seen ice thaw in the presence of flame before? And fire was and is used for purifying precious metals, to get the junk out, the dross out, because the metal is valuable. It's not being burned to punish it. It's being heated up to purify it. It's not the object of disgust and rage. It is precious. So we know that. As you get older, you recognize, oh, I go through some things because it makes me better, not because God is punishing me. Like maybe one time a long time ago, you prayed for patience. Those patience comes with some flames. If you want to become more patient, you should expect some heat. Does Jesus talk about eternal fire, like it never ends? Not really. Every time it's called eternal fire, The word eternal there can be more literally translated. It's the word where we get our word eon. So it's a fire of an age or an era. It's an indefinite period of time. It doesn't have anything to do with infinity. And so once you realize Jesus didn't say hell, he never tied any idea like hell to the idea of the gospel, of being saved, or the word saved is just as often translated in the New Testament healed. Once you start to see that he never tied any of that stuff to the good news of the gospel, there's nothing like that connected to getting out of a pain cave or vindictive punishment, eternal conscious torment. Once we understand that's not there, several great important conversations bubble up that you're going to want to have, and they're conversations that we have all the time. The point is, this horrific, terrorizing idea, it's not in the green beans. It never was. And as we accept that, it leads to an absolutely liberating revolution of faith and purpose. But first, it's going to freak you out. First, it's going to scare you. And here are some reasons why. And this is me trying to tell you that we understand. For me, the realization was super unnerving because it felt like the whole faith came tumbling down and that I was leaving it. That's how much the pain of hell was running in the background of everything. Once it was gone, it felt like the whole thing came crashing down without it. So let me say, I do understand that. Getting your arms around these facts that I'm sharing with you, it will make it feel like it's cutting you off from your own faith, from your parents' or grandparents' faith, from the faith of your favorite childhood pastor, and maybe even more than that. That's real, and I totally get that. And it's not just a feeling either. You start saying some of the things that I just said to others, certain family members at Thanksgiving, they will put you on a prayer list. They will express their worry for you. They will maybe even not talk to you anymore because your beliefs threaten you. And I'm not trying to be funny, even though it's kind of funny. The reason is many of us think that you go to hell for not believing in hell. I mean, how's that for clever marketing? That's several layers of things that aren't in the Bible. And that's another reason that all this is scary, because some of us don't realize we feel protected from hell by being scared of it. But again, none of that's in our sacred texts. And to make the full point, that's religious and emotional abuse that's kept us locked in a catch-22 of needing to believe in the terror to avoid being cast into it. Now, another big scary thing is that it seems like if you take hell off of one side of the scales, heaven comes off the other. And so without hell, heaven starts to fade, and you start to feel like, wait a minute, I guess then death does have the last word. Despite all those Easter sermons where we said and we sang that death no longer has any sting or any punch, that doesn't have the last word. I think it's got the last word. Let me just say, the Bible never talks about you and I going to heaven when we die as some sort of goal. And if you felt free to be honest, most depictions of heaven that you've heard, they're not that appealing. The gowns and the bad music, cumulonimbus in every direction, it's really a yawner after a couple years for sure. So it's good to be reminded that in the scriptures, the promise, it wasn't going somewhere else. It was renewal and resurrection, the redeeming of humanity on the earth that humanity was made to live on, in full peace with ourselves, with one another, the environment, the Spirit who made us. The Hebrew word for all that is shalom. We say peace. The Bible starts and ends in a garden. Jesus resurrects in a garden tomb. And so it's about our shared humanity on the earth that God made. In the beginning, God didn't start with plan B. That doesn't make sense. Plan A was always a beautiful human existence. We are given ultimately a healed humanity, not a floaty fever dream somewhere else. So I'm not claiming to know what I'm talking about firsthand because I don't, give tours to places I've never been. But I'm at least bold enough to tell you that the picture we're given in the scriptures, it's not about going up, up, and away. It's about resurrection, renewal here. I have no idea what that's going to look like, but I have every confidence that it will be good and it will be right. And so this leads me to my final thing that I want to say here, and I know there's a lot that I'm not saying, and hopefully this will start some great conversations. but why it felt useful to talk about something so down in the doctrinal weeds when there are really so many other pressing issues going on in the world right now. And that's besides the fact that no matter what's going on in the world, this is of the most consistent, whispered, hey, what am I supposed to believe about this? Questions that I get. So my last point is simply to ask the question that comes up for people about this and makes them very often consider everything that I've said, agree with it for the most part, and yet still hold on to the idea of God's vindictive, eternal, fiery revenge, hell. And so it's this question. Then what the heck is the gospel? Or the way that I think it's maybe put a little more often is, so, okay, if there's no hell, what's the point of Jesus? So let me say a few things to this, without any condemnation. I want us to see how the idea of Jesus being a ticket out of torture reduces the message, the teaching, the life, the death, the resurrection of Jesus Christ of Nazareth to a product for personal use. As somebody who used to go into people's homes in his teen years and outline the problem of dirt and carpet wear that they didn't know they had, so that I could an hour later sell them the one true vacuum. I sold vacuums for a few years. As somebody who did that, I am very aware of how this works. I'm the expert on problems you didn't realize you had, and I'm also the expert on what the solution is. I know very well how this arrangement works. But if the problem no longer exists, the need for the solution no longer exists. And that leaves this very strange vacuum. In Scandinavian folklore, trolls are afraid of iron. And so parents put a metal knife in the baby's crib at night to scare away the trolls. Once you realize there aren't any trolls, you no longer put a knife in your baby's bed. The problem has been removed, but so are problematic solutions removed too. And everything gets better, but it still leaves this vacuum. And so again, no judgment on anybody here. The question about Jesus's usefulness, if there's no hell for him to sell himself as a solution for, is a reflection of how little we have been taught to think of the importance of love in the here and now, of setting things right where self-interest and foolishness have set them wrong, how little we have been taught to think of the beauty of living in the shalom of God in creation as whole and healthy and collaborating human beings, rather than self-centered, destructive, imbalanced people that we can be if the way that we become as our awareness shuts down. These questions reflect how little we have learned to be led by light, thinking that we have to be threatened into doing well. These questions reflect that we thought it really didn't matter how we lived, how we treated each other. I mean, do your best. But the main point is get your eternal post game straightened out. And so I don't want to sound judgy, but think about how many of us, we know Christians who are way better than proving they're not going to hell than they are at just consistently being kind at work or at school. How many Christians we know that we've met, that we're related to, they're better at sharing a formulaic ultimatum that they call the gospel than they are at embodying something recognizable by other people as good news. Because if the goal is to be like Christ, to be at peace, kind and compassionate, that you're a just person, that you're able to love others without demands on them for their needing to get something back out of them in return. You don't have to be transactional anymore. If the goal is, as the New Testament writer put it, to allow love to cast out, to drive out fear, and to be perfected by love, if that's the goal, the worst, most counterproductive incentive there could ever be is a hell. Because hell keeps us afraid for ourselves, for other people. It makes the goal of being more self-giving and at peace impossible on any legitimate level. I mean, think of it. Love God, love others, radiate joy and peace, the fruit of the Spirit. But if your daughter comes to the wrong conclusions and then dies, Jesus is going to hurt her forever. You and I can't become motivated and grown by love with something that hideous always running in the background. I mean, imagine calling a bank teller with a gun in her face generous as she hands over bags of money. Imagine calling a child responsible because he cleans his room under the threat of a spanking. Imagine calling somebody honest because they decide not to steal the package off your porch once they see that your Ring camera is on. The concept of a hell, this horrific punishment system, creates fear-based, consequence-avoiding behavior, not love. And so if our motivation to act with character and integrity and love was based on hell, then what happens when we remove hell? Who are we? What makes us do well by our neighbor, our enemy, the foreigner, the stranger? What makes us do good if the threat to not do bad is removed? If you were humanity's parent and had sent Jesus as the example, which would you want? Children who are loving for love's sake, for each other, or children who act loving until they know the threat of punishment has disappeared? So the gospel is not a negotiation out of torture that Jesus provides us. So what is it? There's so many different ways to explain it. It's the good news that despite our instincts and assumptions, there's no achievement-based favoritism in the way of the Spirit. It does not work that way. Super frustrating for our egos. You can't achieve it. The good news is that the kingdom of God isn't out there somewhere to be achieved. It's right here in our midst to be awakened to in every moment, regardless of who we're with. No matter who you are or who you are not, it is right here. The good news is that no one is any closer to God than anyone else. It cannot be achieved. You can't go get closer to God by becoming moral, and you're not sliding away from God by being immoral. The gospel is the good news that God isn't on the side of the powerful or the able-bodied or the popular or the rich or the seemingly righteous. The gospel, the good news, is that you can't educate yourself or be ordained into the grace and presence of God. And you can't educate or unordain yourself out of it. The gospel is the good news that you aren't far from God's love and wisdom when you are far from being able to pay your bills, when you are far from having other people's respect, or far from being able to rub elbows with the movers and shakers and the elites, far from so many other things in society's hierarchies of human value. The good news of Christ is that you're as near to God's Spirit and God's love as anyone could be, and that despite our instincts and assumptions about how things work, blessed are the poor, the mourning, the hungry, the meek, the peacemakers. Not blessed are those who succeeded their way up and out of those spaces. Blessed are. Jesus never used or heard of a place called hell, and yet he still found himself useful. He still managed to think it was worth it for him to move around in the midst of people's lives, healing, enhancing their existence, speaking and acting on their behalf, teaching them to pray that things on earth would go so well it was like it was happening in heaven. Jesus spoke of the good news, the gospel, as a function of how he improved people's lives here and now. I mean, look again at how it's presented. Jesus went through all Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and curing every disease and every sickness among the people. Then Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news, the gospel of the kingdom, and curing every disease and every sickness. It's a proclamation that comes with people's lives being improved. Jesus told his students, as you go, proclaim the good news, the kingdom of heaven has come near. Cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those with a skin disease, cast out demons. And Mark says Jesus came to Galilee proclaiming the good news, the gospel of God, and saying the time is fulfilled. It's already happening. The kingdom of God has come near. It's in your midst. Repent, change your minds, and believe in the gospel, the good news. And then you remember in Luke, the Christmas story, that's what the angel said, that they had come with good news for all the people, the gospel that Jesus has been born unto us. It was already happening in that little town of Bethlehem. It's here. It's not for after. It's happening now. And when given the chance in his first public sermon to explain with words what the gospel was, Jesus didn't seem to think it was right to turn it into some transaction where, here's the gospel, pray the sinner's prayer and accept me into your heart and go to church consistently and read the Bible every day and cut down on the cuss words and blah, 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 blah. Or here's this, it's an ultimatum about being tortured forever. This is what he said. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because the Spirit has anointed, Messiahed me to bring the gospel, good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, to set free those who are oppressed, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. The year of the Lord's favor is a reference to this ancient practice of every 50 years canceling everybody's debts and giving their land back to the original owners and releasing people locked in indentured servitude and setting things right. The good news sets things right here and now. It's for the poor, for the most forgotten and marginalized. It's for you. It's for me. And Jesus says, this is why I came. And then he talks about our lives, not our afterlives, being healed. He says the good news is that those who never hear good news are going to hear it from me. And if you're going to follow me, Jesus is saying, then they're going to see it and hear it from you too. So can you see why this matters now? We don't serve people or do what we do as a means to get them to agree with a message that's intended to lock them into the right side of a contract so that they don't go to hell. We serve them because the Spirit of Christ says this is the way right now, here and now. We're trying to join the Spirit in blessing and loving those who our systems otherwise might ignore. We're following the Spirit and setting things right in us and between us. We don't need to be threatened. We're captured by what love actually does in the world, and by the growing compassion and kindness and awareness in our own hearts. In as many ways as we can, we're letting love show us how to cancel out a kind of hell that exists right now for our human siblings, not in the afterlife, but as a feature of our current indifference, our current bigotries and hierarchies, our current unjust treatment of others and the environment, the hell we sort of create here and now by behaving as though our spiritual life is a different thing from the rest of our life, our political life, our economic life, our environmental life. It's all one thing, and love is the way to address all of it here and now. And then on and on and on. Who knows how great and how right it's going to be. But the kingdom is in our midst, and that's the gospel. We don't have to use any cruel threats because we do what we do in the name of love, not out of avoiding what we fear. My friends, as we look at what's happening to people, how they're oppressed by government violence, how they are starved by economic injustice, how they're mistreated by their own families, they're marginalized by self-righteous bigotry. So we look at what has happened in our own lives, all the willful forgetting because people get dubbed as mattering less to somebody else for who they are, what they believe, what they don't believe, what they look like. The good news is for all of them, for all of us now. Not for after, now. It's you and me receiving and then living it out. You don't even have to call it the gospel if you don't want to. You can just call it love and life. That's what it is. This is what Jesus and his way are about right now, the living of our actual lives being transformed together by the way of Christ's love in the real world. This is the point, and we never needed to be threatened to be drawn into it. And so, may we have the courage to leave behind the parts of our faith tradition that we were too afraid to follow our heart about. May we recognize that God gave us a heart, and we are allowed to pay attention to what's happening in it, and to leave behind the empty motivators of fear and threat and step more and more fully into the way of Christ's love. And in so doing, may we see that this faith that we're part of together is as alive and beautiful and relevant and meaningful to our real lives and to the real world as ever. Amen.
If you would like to know more or get connected to Crosspointe, go to crosspointenc.org. If you're in need of care or assistance, go to crosspointe.org/care. And welcome home.